In this session I will go through the force called force, and that is like the secondary force in most cases that works as an accelerator for other forces or like an anti-force for other forces. With that you can do things like this, buoyancy in water and similar. So let's go right into Blender and I can show you how it works. I will minimize this and here is what you have. If you have the correct file called force_force. What I've done here is that I have a source particle and then I have an emitter using that particle. Then I have a cube that will be water, background, and the planes that will be the force later on. So that is all that I put in here. And if we look at the emitter and set up for the particles, then we go to the particle properties. And here you can see that I use frame start of 1 and an end of 200. I also have a very long lifetime. So the particles are alive in the animation when it has reached the end. It also uses the grid as distribution, so we get nice looking rows when everything falls down from the sky. Put the velocity to 0 for the normal, so we don't have any speed in the beginning. It's just the gravity. I put in some rotation, not needed, but since I have a phase of the particles, it's nice to have some rotation in the animation. Then as physics I use the default Newtonian with the default mass, but I check the multiply mass with size, and the reason for that is that we have small and big particles. Smaller particles will be affected a lot by the force, and bigger particles not so much. And to see the difference, thus I check this option. Then I put in some damp, and that is mostly so we don't get particles that are falling down too quickly. By using a little damp, we slow the phase where the particles fall down. So a little damp I think is required here. I have scale randomness, and that is because I would like to have different sizes of my particles. And then the rest is just default settings. If I now run the animation, you can see these nice rows and how the particles smoothly glide through the air in a nice looking way. The problem we have is it doesn't matter for the particles that we have water, since they don't feel it, so nothing happens. We need to put in some forces into that water. So select force plane in the tree here, so you have it, and then you go to physics properties and you select the force field here. And the type is correct, set on force, but in some cases Blender does not update the selection of type. So to be certain that we're really using force, then I suggest that select something else and then just go back to force again. And then Blender knows that you have selected a force type that is force. So now we have force here and we have some strength of value 1 and rest is default 0. So if I now run the animation with the active force, you can see that the small particles are now moving a bit slower compared to the big ones. But everything is still just going down. Perhaps we should have a little bit more of a strength, so I increase it to about 3.5. What happens then? Now almost everything is going up. So we need something that is a bit less, so I decrease it to 2.5. And when I do that, then you can see that most particles go down, but some of them go up. So now we have found a good spot for the strength here. We have bigger particles go down and smaller particles go up. And that is nice because that is what we should have, but in the water. So what we have to do is to use those boundaries in fall off that I showed in the last session, where we tell Blender that yes, this is good for us to use, but only up to the water border here. And what we do then is that we go down to the fall off and check use maximum. And then we put the border for that as the same as the line for the water here. So we increase it. You can see the line here if I go a bit closer. Now you can see the lines here. So right now we would have some force to here, and I would like to decrease that a bit. So I take it down. So I think we have it around 6.37. I think that would be good. We can try it. So I will now go to frame 1. With use maximum checked, I have no force here except the gravity. Then we reach the water, and then we have full force of that force called force in the water. So let's see what happens now. Everything falls down, and now you can see that some of these are going up again. So we get buoyancy in our water. The reason, as I said, is because of the outer border. So here is where we have the maximum. So if I decrease that, you can see that all those are going down, and if I increase the maximum, I can move them up here. So here is how the force is working. You can change the values, of course, when animating if you want to, since you perhaps want to have some different flow or time. But this is all you have to do to make this work. Then you can, of course, put in some noise to this, so not everything is moving in the same speed. You can also put in some internal forces on the particles. So I now increase the noise amount, and then you can see that there are different speed on the particles and not as smooth as before, because the noise here is affecting it. You can also see that it's more jumping up and down in a noisy way because of the noise amount. So a small amount of noise could be good to make variation, but too much would make everything unrealistic. And since this is one of the most simple forces, it's not so much more to show here. Now you know that it can be used to block other forces, and in this case I stopped the gravitation when we reached the water. And then I decided to have this strength, which means that all these particles will stay here. If I had a little less strength, like 1.8, most of the particles will go down, and only the very, very small, as you can see here, will reach the surface. So it's very easy for you to decide if the particles should float or not. It's really nice to see those slow movement that some of these particles have, where they can't really decide if they are heavy enough or not to reach the surface. So that is one very good way to use the force. So let's see how the next force is working in my next session. So I just say bye for now and see you there.